You're listening to a podcast from thespoilist.com. Welcome to First Contact. Does this sound like something a depressed person could make? I'm Andrew.
I'm James.
And I'm Alex.
This time we have been watching The Masterpiece Society. It first aired the week of 10th of February 1992. It had a teleplay by Adam Belanoff and Michael Piller, a story by James Caan and Adam Belanoff, and was directed by Winrich Kolbe. James, what happens in this one?
While carrying out Starfleet's primary mission, following big rocks in space, the Enterprise realises that this one is heading for a previously unknown human colony. While Picard offers assistance, the colonists are resistant. They reveal they have been selectively breeding for 8 generations to create a version of paradise, the very best of mankind where everyone's life and role is predetermined. Without help, their home will be destroyed by earthquakes, but some fear that the natural balance of their society will collapse through interaction with the outside world. Troi is charmed by their leader, while Geordi keeps his distance from their head scientist Hannah after putting into action everything that he learned on his mandatory training course. With a mixture of Hannah's innovation and Federation technology, the colony is saved, but damage has been done. Many decide to leave, seeing the greater potential in the outside world. And that means that we can end the episode by saying something deep about the Prime Directive.
Well, Alex, you had never seen this episode before. What did you make of it?
Well, it's very Star Trek, isn't it? I mean, horny eugenics. What more Star Trek thing could you have? It's good. It does fall into those tropes. Specifically the horniness. But
the ghost of Gene Roddenberry looms large.
And he really does loom. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of sitting around and discussing morality. It's what you would want, isn't it, really?
But they don't fall into the kind of typical debate. They're not talking about whether it's right or wrong with eugenics. And it is wrong, by the way. But they don't lecture the audience on that. Maybe they just assume that we all know it's wrong, that it is bad, and we just move on from that for the purposes of telling the story that they wanted to tell.
It's interesting because, yes, you could obviously do, eugenics is bad, and Star Trek has done that story, but it is very much, there's a society, they're in trouble, and we need to help them kind of story, and then what can we learn about ourselves from this society? But in the same way that goes against exactly what you might expect the episode to be, I think it's structurally really interesting in that I think it basically changes the protagonist of the episode about halfway through, which I liked. I think there was stuff in this episode to surprise me. I mean, I think I remember it being, oh yeah, here we go, this is just TNG on original series mode. There's lots of people with their Marks and Spencer spring catalogue outfits on a planet where everything's perfect. But actually, I thought this was great. I think this is really good Star Trek The Next Generation. It's the sort of episode that if you were to ask someone, well, hey, what is Star Trek Next Generation? You would just show them this, because this is kind of what it is. Or maybe even, what is Star Trek? Is this? Everything in Star Trek is pretty much summed up in this. Please try to ignore the slightly weak Troi romance plot.
I guess it's an interesting one to go in with, well, not to oversimplify it, but eugenics. Well, it's happened. Now what? Because you're right, it does move past that and then deal with the repercussions of then trying to engage in a society that's already down that path, which is perhaps an unusual way of handling it. So I think you're right. If it was original series, it would very much be, the space Nazis.
They say, we've worked, our designers have worked to create the perfect society. Everyone has their role. Everyone is happy. Everyone knows where they are. And there's no sign that, oh, actually, it didn't work out. Oh, they're all inbred. Everything's gone terribly wrong. The actual implication is they do have the perfect society, contained though it is, that they are all exactly what they claim to be. And I guess it's interesting because it is through selective breeding as well, they put it. It is through fetuses being rejected and scanned. It's not through genetic engineering, as it would be, as they rewrote, came to be in the new Star Trek. It is very much, these are the subject of some pretty sketchy Nazi ideas.
But does the episode even insinuate that the people only became unhappy once the Enterprise arrived? Or were they unhappy in that society before, and the Enterprise was an opportunity to either open their eyes on what they were unhappy with, or just to act on their feelings about the society that they lived in? Because the insinuation seems to be that it was the Enterprise arriving that suddenly made people realise there's more to their world than their society. But I feel like you could have made a better message if they were already unhappy, but they were conditioned by their society to believe in this project.
The whole thing with Star Trek is, it's about humanity looking to the stars, of not being content with what we have or what we know. It's about exploration. And this is the great contrast to that. It's the society that says, no, we don't want to know other races, we don't even want to know other people, we are isolating ourselves. And Picard's suggestion certainly is that is the human condition failed. It is no longer humanity at that point, when curiosity about other things and, I guess, exposing yourself to other ideas, then that's a fundamental failing. But I think, based on the premise of the episode, the society was indeed working, and I think that is the interesting thing. And the way they deal with it is quite subtle. Obviously, there's meant to be thousands of people here, and it's a classic Star Trek problem of, we have to explore that thousands of people, this properly, not massive society, but certainly a colony, through 3 people and their ideas and experiences.
Just have some extras walk back and forth in the background. It'll make it look busy.
That was definitely a point I was going to raise. It's a perfect society. Everything works for these high-up members in it. But you don't ever see the guy that's been selectively bred to clean the toilets.
No, that's a very fair point.
I got no nose. That's the selective breeding. It makes me perfect for my job. Crawling through the shitters.
We've got our lead, Aaron Connor, who's the leader of society. Another very blank, slightly creepy man that Troy falls in love with.
What is it about hair and men who look a bit like Norman Bates?
Yes, that's exactly it, isn't it? He has an extremely Batesy vibe.
I mean, it's only 2 men that she's gone out with that look a bit like Norman Bates, but to be honest,
it's a type. After 2, it's a type, I would say.
Yeah.
It's frustrating because obviously we have complained in the past, oh, what do you do with Troy? You give her a love story. I actually think this is not a bad use of Troy in this episode, necessarily. I like her being the example of, oh, humanity, we make mistakes and that's what makes us interesting. I think that's better than her just sensing feelings. I think, but they're very bad at writing human interaction, because he's doing this great forbidden act. Essentially, he is giving up everything potentially for this woman, and I really needed some passion in this. I needed that relationship to be more meaningful. I needed it to be, oh, I have to choose between this society that we've all worked for and Counselor Troy, but they both just seem really awkward around each other, which, to be fair, is also how I would flirt, but it just seems a little bit flat. But I think it serves its purpose. I don't think it in any way ruins the episode. I think it's a perfectly acceptable part, but I think that that element perhaps could have been written up a little bit, but it serves its function.
No, I'd agree with you. I especially think when you get that moment of her saying, "No, this is wrong," it does very much feel of, "Oh, we're going to do something a little bit different here and push back on it." Oh no, she is just going to go through with it. That it doesn't then spoil it. That they then manage to turn that around by having that theme of humans being human and making mistakes. It's to its credit.
I mean, he is supposed to be, I suppose, a little bit stuck up and stilted. I compared it to Hollow Ship, the Red Dwarf episode, which aired 10 days before this one, I believe. And the members of this society seem quite similar to the holograms on Hollow Ship, who'd also been specifically picked for a purpose on their spaceship.
Hollow Ship, you understand that ship in Red Dwarf. They're there because they're the best of the best, and they're out exploring space and being cool and having sex. What is the purpose of this society? Just to have a nice place to live?
You would assume that the first generation were considered to be the best of the best that were available.
Yeah, absolutely.
They had the very best toilet cleaner in all of Earth.
Or they're the best of the best who are mad enough to go and live in a bubble on a desolate planet.
I mean, they may have been the best of the best, but you have to imagine that they were also pretty right-wing. It would be like having Fox News, but staffed by incredibly competent people.
There was a ship of incels that left Earth, but unfortunately that never lasted past the first generation.
The other character of Hannah, and you're like, are they going to do a Geordie love story? She's got to work with him in order to create a new tractor beam, which is more powerful to move the stellar core fragment, which is a bit that disintegrated off a neutron star. So their plot, the science plot, is to try and do something.
They have to tow a planet across space, basically. It's like the end of series 4 of Doctor Who. That awful ending.
Yeah, they've got to use the tractor beam to tow a big rock across space. Also, yeah, a surprisingly interesting plot strand.
And they reveal here that Geordie is actually blind.
What?
Yeah, it's strange how it's never been brought up until now, but yeah.
You know how it is with TV shows, they just sort of add something in if it's useful to the story.
You just thought the visor made him look cool.
Every week, LeVar Burton campaigning to just get it in there. Every week disappointed. But then this episode, this is my week.
But yeah, that plot obviously it allows them to raise the ethics issue, which is basically, hey, don't disabled people have a right to live? Don't people who don't exactly match your specification have something to contribute to society? And I think that's very nicely handled. I think that's some good writing. It's not too on the nose, although it is fairly on the nose, but again, it works. You've got two people working together, you've got one that's got a particular attitude, and then you have basically a fairly straightforward discussion about it, and the other person comes out essentially changing their mind.
It kind of has to be on the nose, really, because there's no way to do that in a subtle way.
No. And it's interesting that it's all humans. Sometimes with your sort of Star Trek metaphors about human behaviour, it'd be, well, these aliens murder their young if they've got 2 heads, but only let the ones with 3 heads live. So, yeah, it's actually better just to be explicit at times.
Yes, and not have, on our planet, we don't call it abortion, we call it Glocknock.
You really are lobbying to write for Discovery, aren't you?
Glocknock, we really have so much to learn about each other's societies. Da 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 da.
Why is it always humans they encounter? Why is it never a weird like Vulcan colony? Oh no, they've done that. Why is it never a weird Ferengi colony? It's always humans. Are humans everywhere? Are humans like the bacteria of the galaxy?
Yes.
They do speak to aliens, but they can never understand them.
They just try shouting louder at them. I was sort of intrigued because I thought Hannah was just going to be a kind of a general plot science person. Oh, we've solved the problem has been solved. Again, very on the nose. Hey, we've solved this problem, and they say it is just using something designed to help with disability. Hey, how'd you like them apples? We're gonna make a magic tractor beam. Does that tractor beam enhancement ever come up again?
Well, they've only got one visor, so...
Did they actually fit it to the end on the deflector dish?
Yeah, that's why he doesn't have it in the films. It's destroyed in a tractor beam related accident.
Is that one of the comic books?
Oh, I'm sure it definitely is. There's a novel series about it. Big Finish are planning on doing an audio series.
Countdown to First Contact, written by Alex Kurtzman.
But Geordi labouring the point does probably influence Hannah even more than she probably was influenced. I mean, he does it unintentionally. He thinks he's just maybe being a bit jokey about it, although probably, much like Picard, is not a fan of their society's morals.
She is essentially there as science plot device. I've got an idea. Hey, maybe with our power and your ingenuity, we can do this thing. But then, like, halfway through the episode, she suddenly becomes basically the protagonist of it. She gets a personality and she gets motivation. And I thought that was really interesting structurally, in that you've set up this kind of Troy love story type arc and that kind of just ends. But then it's like the stuff that's been going on in the B plot actually becomes the character plot. And I thought that was very deftly handled.
Yes, that whole pivot to... Well, I guess it's, again, going back to what we said earlier about the idea of eugenics now what? That idea of, well, this is the society that it is, and if we take away a part that it's going to fall apart, is an interesting pivot to have halfway through. Because I guess it's always been there, obviously on the table. They don't try and hide it. It's referenced, but it does become a lot more dominant in that second half.
Yeah, because it's completely choreographed. They say Hannah can't go up to the ship because it could cause problems. She could come across ideas that she's not supposed to, and that's what happens.
I guess there's that element of the isolation again, because as she says, I'm supposed to be the greatest scientific mind of my generation, perfectly designed in order to be the best and brightest, and yet I've seen technology that is years in advance of our own. And Geordi says, oh yes, I guess necessity really is the mother of invention, but I guess, yeah, do they need scientific advancement in that society? Do they need what might come up on a Starfleet ship? I guess it is just that question of, is a perfect society a content one, or is it the most advanced one? Is it about technological advancement? It does slightly remind me of Star Trek Insurrection, and you've got this isolated society, this time with their autumn colours, and their way of being the perfect society is to have no technology. What exactly are they building to in that society? It doesn't really matter for the nicely structured play that we watched, but yeah, I guess that's good motivation for people of that kind, who the science people who want to leave to discover more. But I guess, do the artists not want more inspiration, or are they happy to just stay inside their bubble and look out at the harsh brown rocks? Lovely matte painting, by the way, in this episode.
There are no artists in that society. It's all AI art generation. It's a planet of middle managers. Everything else is automated. It's just middle managers creating reports that just go round on a monthly cycle.
Yeah, but even AIs need prompts. A bee wearing sunglasses.
You have been designed to be the perfect prompter for AI. I would like to talk about the character of Martin Bendeck.
I don't know who that is. I assume it's the man that jumps in every so often and says, "But you can't do that," and that's his character.
Yes.
I want to guess.
That's the one.
Martin.
Who played...
Ron Canada, isn't it?
Yeah. So he's played by Ron Canada, who, according to his Wikipedia, always plays judges. So very well cast here. But he sort of reminded me of a very cliched sort of police captain in an 80s TV show who's just like saying, "You can't do this," and then just disappearing again. It's a thankless role. I was really confused because I was like, I know him. I know this guy from Star Trek.
I was thinking the exact
He's clearly
same
been in
thing.
Star Trek before.
I was watching it the whole way through going, I'm sure I've seen him in... Have I seen him before in something, or am I just being a bit dodgy?
I did the exact same thing. That's why I knew his name off by heart, because I looked him up.
Yeah, and then it turns out he is the Admiral in the Orville, which is why my brain was like, he's in Star Trek The Next Generation. I know he is, but no. But he's been in everything.
He's been in Deep Space Nine and Voyager as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, he got the trifecta.
Everybody's just happy to be working.
I hope he got a better role in those than he did in this. To be the judgmental one who follows round the administrator.
You can't do that on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, but then in Voyager, he gets to say, "You can't do that in the Delta Quadrant."
Of course, that is who the Harry Enfield character was based on. Oh, you've just brought down your society by letting a member escape from your perfect eugenic cycle. You didn't want to do that. That's very niche.
It's weird how some characters survive in the pop culture consciousness and others don't, isn't it?
Wonderful the way that we tailor to the audience of an American TV show.
Yeah, and actually a mostly American listenership.
A mostly American listenership with references to a TV show that really has not translated anywhere outside of the UK and is also, 20, 30 years out of date, yeah.
Anyway, the resolution. There's drama in Star Trek. People want to leave, other people want to stay. The people who want to stay want to convince the people who want to leave that they should stay. Oh,
they all go a bit your questionable first boyfriend. Just give me 6 months.
I can change, or I can stay the same. Whichever one it is that you want. Understandable. I think an interesting conclusion. The problem, I guess, is when they say at the end, 23 of them decided to leave, and you go, well, how many are there? Because they said, if people die, we can accommodate that. Because I assume 8 generations of breeding should create a relatively high number, selective or not. So I assume it's thousands rather than hundreds. I don't know. Does 23 seem like it would damage everything, or is it just the ideas that you've been exposed to? Don't listen, just stick to our religion.
There is that slightly amusing element that you have with these sort of TNG endings of, well, this could be the end of our society. We've lost 23 people. Either this could be the glorious start of a betterment for the future, or everything could fall apart and we could end up just tearing everything down and killing each other. Yes, I suppose it could go that way. Well, bye-bye.
I mean, actually, what do you think of Picard in this episode? I quite like him. He's sort of ruminating, having an opinion. He's like, I'm not going down to the planet. I'm just going to stay in my office. Aren't you one of the great diplomats of the Federation? I think Councillor Troy can handle this one just fine.
I mean, he puts on a brave face when he's like talking to Troy and puts on a good game of, well, humans make mistakes, it's what we do, and all of this. But then when he's actually put in a situation of having to make a choice, he's all sort of very, I suppose 6 months might be reasonable. Just flits with the wind.
It goes back to And it reminded me of Half-Life. Because Lwaxana Troi, the outsider, is the one saying, oh, these rules in their society are outrageous. And Picard, he's saying you have to respect the rules of their society, even if he disagrees with them. And it's the same here. He disagrees with their society probably even more so than in Half-Life. But he has to respect them as an outsider. I don't know if the Prime Directive comes into it, because the Prime Directive is about the natural course of society, and they are by their very nature an unnatural society. But he still has to, and that's part of being a diplomat, he has to respect their society even when he doesn't agree with it.
But I do enjoy the slight undertone towards the end of, let's just get it over with. Let's just get away. I've had enough. Do what you want. I don't sodding care anymore.
Does the Enterprise have a schedule it needs to keep up with? And are they constantly having to push things back whenever they're held up by any of these problems?
Yeah, but do you not think like their schedule is like literally monitoring the space rock? That's what they do, and it just was by happenstance that it was like, oh, there's a colony on that planet, and that's going to get destroyed.
Oh God, it's more middle managers. That's the great reveal. It's just middle manager upon middle manager. Middle managers all the way down.
The perfect society.
Time is relative as well, so who knows where they've got to be and when.
I'm a middle manager, actually. I work in middle office and I'm a manager.
Yeah, you're only on this podcast on an inclusion scheme.
You're in the middle of 3 podcasters.
I don't want to think about it, but I mean, that might describe my role quite well as well.
We are a podcast of middle managers.
Yeah. It ends with a discussion about the Prime Directive. It feels very much like here's a tacked on discussion to sum up the episode, which I like. Structurally, I like that. Don't know if it says anything. The Prime Directive's important. Yes, but it doesn't apply. Doesn't it? No.
You need something to top and tail it. You can't end everything with a police squad freeze frame.
Not till the next episode.
As much as I'd like to see that. I think that could be quite amusing. Oh yes, it could all fall apart. Well, see ya. Freeze. That's the music. I was trying to remember the music, and all that was coming to my head was the Sweeney.
It's not a million miles away.
Just more references for the US audience there.
So you've just got everyone frozen on the bridge, and
that's the naked
not
now.
Not actually frozen, but you've got Sonia Gomez who just has a hot chocolate and it's just spilling out of her hands as she's trying to keep her hands steady. But you can't really have a moral message at the end of this. It sets it up from the beginning, really. There isn't really a moral message to have about eugenics.
No. And I suppose you could say in the Masterpiece Society, nobody died.
But people possibly will die after these 23 people leave.
Well, I'm sure someone will check in on them.
And if they don't die of that, I mean, the strong likelihood is that genetic deficits from years of inbreeding will catch up with them eventually. What a cheery end to the podcast.
They didn't think this selective breeding thing through, did they?
I think we've said enough about that. A surprising amount, if I'm honest. Let's say a few more things in quick fire. I would like to nominate Aaron Connor for the worst chat-up line of all time, and perhaps a bit of negging. Perhaps it's your imperfections that make you so unique. No, I mean, why is she falling for that? She has to do better.
But still, it could be worse. I mean, you've got the LaForge line. My Vase's positronic scan would have detected the leak. Its molecular pattern enhancer would pick up even the smallest crack. Disgusting.
Yeah, the writers didn't like it. Nobody liked it. Everyone here on Memory Alpha is criticising it except Michael Pillar. He said, "This was the beginning of me feeling better about the season. It was another one of these shows that had been around for a while and a lot of writers had taken a shot at it. 5 writers had a go at this. It dealt with genetic engineering and abortions and interesting things for Geordi to do and a relationship between Troy and the leader of society. I think it's a real classic tragedy because everybody was trying to do the right thing in that episode and it ended up in destruction. Aside from some disappointment in casting, I was rather pleased with that. I think a lot of people were rather pleased they liked it as much as they did. This is the recurring theme. This is really interesting." So Jerry Taylor says, "Michael and I are at odds about it. It was an idea I didn't like from the beginning. I didn't like the concept. I wasn't wild about the script. I thought it was one of our weakest episodes of the season. When Colby observed, the people were too damn perfect, and I don't think perfection makes for good drama. Wasn't too intrigued with the lead actor either, and that turned out to be kind of a flat episode for me." Colby also remarked, "I like that idea, but I'm not satisfied with the casting. I don't think the episode had enough energy. Maybe it's unfair to blame the casting. Maybe I just didn't give it energy. I liked the concept and the script. I just didn't like the show."
God, I'm imagining not being keen on this, but going to the previous episode and thinking the date rape one was just cracking, though.
It's weird. I mean, I think you're being quite harsh on that lead actor as well, and quite publicly.
It's fine. There's been much worse than this. Alright, it's not going to set the world on fire. You might not remember it very well, but it's perfectly competent. You know, it works from start to finish. There's no sort of Geordie pisses about making a model boat in a bottle for a few minutes. Everything in there feels like it should be in there. Even the stuff that seems like it's superfluous at the time builds to something.
Those bits are great when Geordie and Data are doing something silly. I like that.
Would this episode have been enhanced by the two of them discovering a love of sombreros? I don't know.
Oh, it would have been great if...
just in the background of these shots, just while they're having these meaningful discussions about the collapse of society. Data there, big sombrero.
Dr. Crusher appears in one scene at a meeting. No one knows why. Everyone's getting paid, so you might as well use them.
I think it's what's described commonly as room meat. I can barely muster up the enthusiasm, but I suppose we should have a look at the Nitpicker's Guide. Under continuity...
It's a Troy episode, so you know.
Weirdly, nothing sexually dodgy.
Where's the email so I can send in a complaint?
Then you'll be a member of the Nitpickers Guild.
Under continuity and production problems, he does say that the creators spelled the name of the actor who played Aaron Connor wrong when the episode first aired. When Paramount first uplinked this episode, the credits listed John Snyder, and all subsequent reruns correctly listed it as John Snyder.
Release the Snyder Cut.
Sometimes I think some of these don't work in an audio format.
Oh, it was John Snyder instead of John Snyder.
Yeah. It's easy to see how you'd confuse Snyder with Snyder.
I mean, we have the audio version of the Nitpickers, guys, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
What? I wonder what it says for that in that. Do you think it spells it out?
Hang on, is that genuinely a thing?
Yeah.
Did you know who reads it?
To be honest, my mind is blown that it even exists. Go on, who reads it?
Could take a guess.
Someone that needed the money.
You're on the right
very
track.
Close.
Denise Crosby.
That's one.
Yes.
That's one of them. Isn't the other one Will Wheaton?
No,
I thought Will Wheaton did it.
it's Dwight Schultz. He's the other reader.
Do you want me to see if I can find the section of the Nitpicker's Guide so you can drop that in there so we can see what it actually does for that bit?
Okay, returning to the Nitpicker's Guide. I thought we were done here. We are not done. We have avoided sexual deviousness, so that's something. But we have come up against some issues with disability. Under plot oversights, Phil says, after encountering a problem in the tractor beam research, LaForge comments to Hannah Bates, I haven't had any sleep in so long my eyelids feel like lead weights are attached to them. This implies that LaForge is struggling to keep his eyes open. Isn't this a rather odd statement for LaForge to make? Normally people try to keep their eyes open when they're tired because they can't see with their eyes closed. LaForge's visor pumps the information directly into his brain through the little attachment in his temples. It doesn't matter whether his eyes are open or closed. Phil, that's not how it works. Blind people don't automatically sleep with their eyes open. It's a muscle reflex, you madman. Just every blind person walking around with incredibly dry eyes because they can't close them when they sleep. The man's insane. And slightly, yeah, I mean, it's not a great take on the blind, is it?
Don't worry, they'll never read it. Oh wait, there's an audiobook? Oh no.
Well, I mean, I guess, given they only revealed Geordie was blind this episode, the writers weren't really thinking.
Imagine getting 318 pages through something to discover the concept of blinking.
Well, that's us talks about another episode. I hope it was worthwhile for you. We'll be back again next time when we'll be talking about Conundrum. Until then, goodbye.
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 The creators spelled the name of the actor who played Aaron Connor wrong when this episode first aired. When Paramount first uplinked this episode, the credits listed John Cinder. All subsequent reruns list the actor correctly as John Snyder.